The North Must Remember, Episode 8 Review. Episode 8 consists of videos 74 through 80, and yes, Daenerys was transformed into the Night King. She woke Drogon and attacked King's Landing. She waited for a while for the army to attack first, and this led Cersei into a false sense of security. The battle was ongoing for hours before Dany finally revealed herself. This allowed Arya for some time to arrive at King's Landing at approximately the same time. I wanted to lead with that because there was a question as far as the timeline, how Arya would get there before Cersei. But I'll explain more about that moving forward. All right, so we'll get right into this. So video 74. Tyrion realized Cersei has engaged both armies, both living and the dead, on opposite sides of the Blackwater Rush. Tyrion decides to make one last effort to convince her to unite their forces. Unfortunately, I have no named character left that's involved with the battle. Maybe Sir Hunt's, I guess, but as a new character in Season 8, I didn't want to give him his own POV, as that might be confusing to some readers. I guess this is a byproduct of killing off as many people as I have. Accepting not having a first-person involvement in the battle because, well, I mean, we've all seen this battle with the dead before, and it might come off as extremely redundant. So we're left with Arya and Tyrion having their own separate view of the battle, rather than any kind of direct involvement. Video number 75, Arya and Gendry wake to see an injured Jon. They found out Dany did not recall the army, and decided to continue the attack on King's Landing. It's reasonable to assume that she wants vengeance, but she's not quite mad. It's not clear to the reader, and that's on purpose. I wanted to make some suspense. Jeez, I can't talk today. Gendry heads to Harrenhal to convince Bran to talk to Cersei. Arya heads to King's Landing to head off Daenerys. Arya is confident that she will be able to infiltrate the Red Keep, knowing Dany would stay atop Drogon, and it would take her much longer to ensure Cersei's death. A bit of a continuity issue. There was no way for Gendry to know the Red Woman was imprisoned. She was sent to convince Cersei to unite their armies with the Second Sons. And then she would enter King's Landing under a white flag and, try to convince her. Gendry would have no idea that Cersei would then, imprison the messenger, basically. So, a little bit of a continuity issue there that hopefully you guys will forgive me for. Arya's current motivation in heading to King's Landing is to keep Jon alive, not necessarily revenge. That's kind of a byproduct of the plot at this point. Video number 76. So Cersei is confident that the dragons are dead, and she will win the battle. The last-minute addition I added was that Daario had informed them as to the Dragonglass mine location. Probably should have included that scene of Bronn heading up to the mines on Dragonstone, but alas, water under the bridge. Bronn had some significant off time, and I think that added to the surprise of Jaime and Tyrion meeting him under the Red Keep, so maybe it was good that I kept that scene out. Just added a couple lines there real quick so the readers would know that the Golden Company was armed with Dragonglass, simply because they knew of the mine's location, so you can kind of just infer the fact that they brought some Dragonglass back to King's Landing. Cersei already had knowledge of the legend of the Prince That Was Promised due to Thoros of Myr, which led to a fantastic scene, in my opinion. I think that Melisandre informs her that Jaime was the Prince That Was Promised. I originally had not decided to include the Prince That Was Promised, but after deciding Jaime was going to be the one to kill the Night King and reading up on the tempering of Lightbringer, Jaime made even more sense, given the water at Pike and then the lion, basically the self-mutilation. Unfortunately, there, again, was some small continuity because the regicide happened before the Siege of Pike. Not that I think they have to happen in order or anything like that, but as I've revealed to you guys before, I like making prophecies ring true, but in kind of a backdoor kind of way. Again, that game of telephone, as legends are passed down through generation to generation, they tend to change a little bit. So when the prophecy finally does come true, it does it in a roundabout way. I think that's probably the most entertaining way to make it happen, and also keep everyone on their toes. You're never really sure if a prophecy is coming true, or if it did come true, because it did that in that backhanded sort of way. Then having Melisandre reveal to Cersei that Jaime loved another woman. In my opinion, that was a fate worse than death. All at the same moment. Not only does Cersei realize that Jaime loved a different woman, but also the dragon finally arrives at King's Landing. It just, that scene still kind of just makes my arm hair just stand up on end. There was some criticism of the choice, but the choice of Jaime, but I hope Melisandre convinced you that Jaime was indeed the right choice. Drogon then attacks at the end of the episode, and in that moment, Cersei then accepts her loss, and likely her own death, which is very key for upcoming videos in episode 8 to kind of explain her actions a little bit. As soon as she saw the dragon, she knew it was over. Alright, so video 77. Gendry convinces Bran to plead to Daenerys on Jon's behalf. It's intended to install a certain amount of strife to the audience. I wanted the readers to want Dany to raise the Red Keep. That was kind of the whole point of doing it this way, is because you as the reader realize Dany's finally attacking the Red Keep. She's finally going to take Cersei out. But at the same time, there are some consequences to that. Not just some faceless innocents like they did in the show, but actual characters, being Arya and being Jon. If Dany continues down this path and righteously burns the Red Keep to the ground, I think no one can blame her for wanting to do that. But there's an added layer of complication that is being Arya's death and Jon's death. So you as the audience, especially if you're a Dany fanboy or fangirl, you're really put in a tough spot because you really want her to finally do this. So you've been waiting 8, 9, 10 years for this to happen, but now there's some unintended consequences. That extra layer of complexity really, in my opinion, leads to a good story, which hopefully you think this is. You don't want her to attack, even though it's well within her right, but Dany has that choice, vengeance or family. Family being the father of her child. There really is no right answer. It all just depends on your own personal perspective. Should Dany attack or simply withdraw her army and go away? Video number 78. So Arya finally arrives in King's Landing and notices Tyrion. She decides to face change and not let Tyrion know, as his emotion from figuring out that Jaime died would possibly affect Arya's ability to get close to Cersei. It's not likely that Tyrion could put on a good show mere seconds after finding out that Jaime died. So Arya decided to keep Tyrion in the dark. In my opinion, if a face changer takes someone's face, they will take their entire body, which complicates clothing issues, but that's getting way too granular for the purposes of this story. Arya taking Jaime's face was my most likely theory that I had for Season 8, and I was devastated when it did not happen. It just made way too much sense to ignore. Think about it for a second. Maisie Williams, Arya, trained to use her left hand when learning to use a sword. Why train a 12-year-old to fence with their non-dominant hand unless it was crucial to the story? If it was crucial, then why? Why was it so important for Arya to be left-handed and be represented as left-handed? Because she could take Jaime's face and continue to be extremely deadly, likely to someone's surprise. Well, if that's the case, who would underestimate Jaime in a duel? Bronn's the only one. Who trained him as a discreet swordsman? If this doesn't happen in the books, I'd be extremely disappointed. It just makes way too much sense. What is Bronn's motivation for attacking them? Bronn is currently unaware that Dany is attacking on Drogon. He assumes Cersei is going to emerge from this whole mess victorious, and thus he has finally chosen a side, and paid for it with his life, as most sellswords do. Arya has no idea who Bronn is, and attacks only when provoked. Arya doesn't choose to kill Bronn, but looks to Tyrion for guidance. Tyrion realizes that Bronn's own ambition has finally outgrown Tyrion's ability for compensation. Tyrion, in that moment, realizes how dangerous it is keeping Bronn around, and then finally decides to have him executed. Video number 79. Bran has an audience with Dany. His ability was established based on his own experiences during the Battle for the Dawn. Dany is reluctant to withdraw, which makes sense, and Dany, once again, is faced with a choice: vengeance or family. However, if Jon dies, he'll then be with Dany, sort of, depending on how you view the Night King's duties and responsibilities. So Dany's really in a tough spot. There's no incentive not to attack, in her mind, and this is a just action. But she is supportive of the Arya assassination. She just wants to ensure it happens before she withdraws her army. Video number 80. So Cersei immediately executes Melisandre, and the audience now feels hope for Jon is lost, though technically Jon is not dead yet. Arya then kills Ilyn Payne, and this confuses Cersei. Arya wanted Payne dead just as much as Cersei, and possibly one could view this as the true climax of the story, even more than the trial by 7. The decision came down to Arya and her list, and Dany's need for revenge. The throne is no longer an option for Dany, but Cersei killed Drogon and could be blamed for multiple other issues. Bran enters the throne room as Summer, though he cannot properly communicate. Cersei then orders Tyrion to be executed. The reason this is different from season 7 is because Cersei knows she has lost now that the dragon has arrived. Cersei was hoping that the dead would defeat the Dragon Queen, which is why she let Tyrion live in season 7. She realized if she executed Tyrion, Dany could just destroy King's Landing right then and there. Now she knows she will be defeated and has nothing to lose. Dany arrives and is forced again with a decision to deal justice herself or trust in another to do it. Dany has always been very hands-on when it comes to justice, so having her trust in another is a big ask. I like to think that when Summer and or Bran placed himself in between them, Bran and Dany's conversation continued, and Bran convinced her to trust Arya. Arya's decision now was even more complex from her point of view. She saw with her own eyes how Jaime Lannister was treated after the murder of his own monarch, one that was detested even more than Cersei. When facing completion of her list, all she did was hesitate, which was enough for Tyrion to interject and order Cersei taken away. One could argue Tyrion saved Arya, possibly from herself, from making a big mistake. Can't be a mistake to kill Cersei, but in that way, who knows? Who knows how the Westeros would react to another murdered monarch? In some ways, this could also be the trial of mankind that the gods were referring to, was Arya making this decision, as well as Dany. A trial for a monarch that could keep the kingdoms together rather than an assassination and an explanation as to why. I really kind of think that was the climax of the story. Out of nowhere, Sansa's feelings for Tyrion was one of the 2 reasons that I decided to keep Sansa alive. She was originally supposed to die in the crypts during the Battle for Winterfell, murdered by a reanimated Rickon, and then discovered by the Hound later on and put down in a very emotional scene, but I decided to cut that part out and keep Sansa alive, because I think that was really pivotal for Tyrion, because Tyrion at this moment has no reason to live. So Sansa got a bit of a reprieve in an attempt to keep Tyrion off the ledge, both metaphorically and physically. Plus, it gave an opportunity to have Sansa and Cersei meet again face to face later on in episode 9. Alright, on to some questions and comments. More comments than questions this time for episode 8. Yeah, that becoming the Night Queen was a pretty tough part. There was probably only 2 or 3 scenes where I personally got very emotional when writing it. Sandor's death, Jaime killing the Night King, and then Dany's transformation. All 3 of those scenes were extremely tough. I guess I could mention Theon'S death as well. But there's a couple more moments later on in episode 9 as we're kind of putting this world back together that are pretty emotional. Yes, Jaime's face. God, that was one of my favorite parts. That if that doesn't happen in the books, I'm just going to be so disappointed. I can't even mention how disappointed I'll get. Yep, Cersei has 2 Valancoirs coming her way, but unfortunately both of them decided to stand down, which I think is the right decision. Absolutely not. No Mad Queen. Dany was absolutely in her right mind and was justified in her action. But again, she chose to Yeah, do things the right way. Trust the system, I guess. But even though the system is quite perverted. Yeah, Cersei Cersei finding out that Jaime loved another woman, that is absolutely, as I said before, it's a fate worse than death. I loved writing that scene. Yeah, Arya's pretty good. But again, having her take Jaime's face, it just makes sense in my point of view. Yeah, Ty actually called it even before you found out that Arya took Jaime's face. Yeah. Thumbs up for you for paying attention. Nice call. Yeah, the Return of Summer wasn't exactly what you thought. Probably thinking about the seasons. But yeah, later on, Varys and Mel's Ruby, that comes into play in episode 9. I'm not going to leave you guys hanging when it comes to any thread. Try to answer as many of these, or fill as many of these plot holes as possible. Yeah, that was a tough scene. Sansa. Glad it was as emotionally impactful for you as it was for me to write it. Alright, so moving on to our character review. This week it is Daenerys. Only one more character review after this, because there will be only one more episode. So, Daenerys. So, she's incredibly self-righteous, and for good reason. She's an incredibly moral character, but also morally ambiguous. Which is to say, she does terribly destructive things, but they're each and every time it's for a good reason, or at least a reason you can relate to. The problem with a character like that is having the audience on your side. Each and every tough decision she's going to have to make, such as burning the Tarleys, may lose part of that audience. So it's very risky as a writer to assume the audience will agree with you. Her decision to become the Night Queen is in line with her character, in my opinion. She once told Sansa, way back in episode 2 of season 8, in my version, she left every city more powerful than when she arrived. Well, now she came to Westeros. Now she's basically a god. So even though she, took part in the Battle of Winterfell and she lost, she still came to a new place and became more powerful. She lost a dragon or two, technically, but now she has the power of a god. So she kind of kept true to her word at that point, whether she realized it or not. Her propensity for gaining power exceeded that of which the Iron Throne even offered her anymore. She jumped at the opportunity to become more powerful. That is a fitting conclusion for her character, in my opinion. She treated everyone in Westeros as her people, and condemned herself to thousands of years in exile, because all she ever wanted, simply, was to save people. And she did. I believe this was an easy decision for her to make, and she didn't think twice. Dany's not mad. She's a hero. And she is the true protector of the realm. And I'm not even a Dany fan, let's be honest. But I do think she is an excellent character. I probably wouldn't even put her in my top 5, which may be the subject of a future video, I'm not sure. Again, we're coming up on episode 9, which will be the last episode for season 8, and I'm strongly considering doing a season 9. More to follow when it comes to that in closeout. Again, I always encourage criticism or any questions. Love to hear it. Would love to cover your comments and anything coming up in episode 9. So please like, subscribe. I won't ask during the stories because I don't want to take you out of the moment, but I will be sure to always plug my channel, The North Must Remember, anytime I can during these reviews. If you listen to these reviews, you are honestly a true Mad Dog fan of this content. Thank you for listening to that. It's easy to listen to the story, but if you want background information and listen to me ramble for 15 or 20 minutes, hey, honestly, I appreciate it. So anyone listening to this, sincerely appreciate. I think we just crossed 11,000 views on the channel. I never thought it would be that popular, but again, thanks for listening. And again, any questions or comments, feel free to send them my way. I love responding to those things. Take care. Upcoming episode 9. Hope you guys enjoy it.